Adam, good to see you again. This time, 3
Chris, good
weeks
evening.
ago, most of us would have found it impossible to believe the current situation in Ukraine, that Russia's attacks could have escalated so quickly and violently. And as you've written in The Australian today, we're now at a point where sending arms and cheering on Ukraine only fuels needless deaths. Meanwhile, sanctions imposed on Russia are penalties on the whole world. Have we got all of this wrong?
Well, look, it's a very difficult situation, Chris, and there's no right answer here. But the point I was trying to make today is that there's so much death and destruction every day, and we have to ask what is that? What's the price here of Ukraine being outside of having the option rather of joining NATO at some point? I mean, I would argue it's too high a price to pay, and the conditions Russia has set to end the war immediately aren't all that different, really, from the status quo that existed those 3 or 4 weeks ago. They want Ukraine to be permanently outside of NATO, which is just like Sweden and Finland, and those countries obviously have thrived outside NATO. They want Ukraine to recognise that Crimea is Russian permanently, and they want those two small eastern provinces to be independent. Now, practically speaking, those things existed 3 or 4 weeks ago, and France and Germany had long said that they would never let Ukraine join NATO. So I wondered to myself, what is all this death and destruction over? It's obviously tragedy, and Russia's in the wrong in my view. I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but it doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. The fact is that this is what they think. This is what they said they would do, and the world has to be realistic about what is possible here. I mean, do they really want this war to go on forever, to grind on more and more deaths, just so Ukraine has the option of joining NATO at some point down the track? As for the sanctions you mentioned, sanctions have never worked at any point in history. They've never dislodged a bad regime, whether it's North Korea or Iran or Venezuela. So they make us feel good, but they're not going to work, and they risk, at least in my view, turning Russia longer term into a giant North Korea, if you like.
Yeah, you make some obvious points. Having said that, though, the Ukraine people themselves believe that they have a right, a democratic right, to do with their country as the people want, which is they want protection from NATO.
Well, look, that is right. And look, I fully understand that, but it just gets down to the question of what price are they willing to pay for that. And I mean, I don't know how many surveys there've been since the war started, but it's possible a minority at least would like some sort of negotiated peace. I mean, if the West is not going to go in and fight properly, and there's no doubt that NATO could completely wipe the field here with Russia, whose invasion, let's be frank, has been hopeless. I mean, It's been bogged down. It's gone far slower than anyone would have thought. But that said, that doesn't mean Russia's going to lose or withdraw. It just means this thing's going to grind on and on and on. So the point in my column really was what price are we paying here? What price is mainly the Ukrainian people, of course? What price are they paying for this idea, which is maybe a false hope that they can join a NATO and everyone's going to live happily ever after? That's possibly not going to happen.